All right, I'll give you 2 minutes, but then I need to start my show. But don't tell me that you don't know why there's no sun up in the sky when you know full well that you're the one that caused the tempest in the first place. Granted, I understand why you're vengeful, since your brother Antonio usurped you and cast you adrift on that island. But it's not like you and your gal Miranda ain't together. She's there with you and she loves learning from you. Just keep her away from that lecherous beast Caliban. Sure, the two of you have been stranded on a desert island for the past 12 years. But there are 2 ways you can look at the situation. I can understand why you might think that life is bare and there's gloom and misery everywhere. But look at it through Miranda's eyes. Everything is new to her, and what she sees is a brave new world, and you can do the same. I know you say that you just can't get your poor old self together and that you're weary all the time, but think of your daughter. When she went away with you, she was only 3 years old. And even though you say that when you got to the island, the Blues walked in and they met ye, Miranda is happy because she's never known anything different. If she stays away from contact with other people, including Ferdinand, who you know she'll love, how can she ever hope to return to Italy and perhaps even become the Queen of Naples? All I do is pray that you'll give her a chance to find happiness and just walk in the sun once more. Your bitter vengeance towards your brother Antonio can't go on. I mean, it's been 12 years. If you keep saying to yourself, everything I had is gone, you'll never be at peace with yourself. So it's up to you, Prospero. Either end the stormy weather or it keeps raining all, and I mean all, of the time. In the 2005 film Bewitched, Nicole Kidman plays a witch who marries a human, but only uses her magical powers for good. In The Tempest, Prospero is a human who becomes stranded on an island and develops magical powers that he ultimately decides to use for good. So prepare your mind to enjoy this fantasy, and let's take a look at the plot. This play starts dramatically with the ship being tossed around by waves in a violent storm. On board the ship is King Alonso of Naples, who is heading home from his daughter Claribel's wedding in Tunis. He is accompanied by his son Ferdinand and his friends Sebastian, Antonio, and Gonzalo. As the storm worsens, the boatswain asks the noblemen to stay in their cabins and out of harm's way so that the crew can keep the ship safe. There are many cries of panic and prayer as the ship begins to sink. Meanwhile, on a nearby island, Miranda and her father Prospero watch the storm. She worries about the poor souls on board, but Prospero tells her to be calm, and he uses his magic powers to ensure that the passengers are all safe. He then tells her about their past. 12 years earlier, Prospero was the Duke of Milan, and Miranda, whose name means to wonder at, was a princess. However, they were betrayed by his brother Antonio and Alonso, the King of Naples. They sent Prospero and his daughter away on a rotten carcass of a butt. The two washed up on the island, and ever since then, Prospero has spent his time developing magic powers. He controls Ariel, a sprite, and Caliban, his servant, who is the offspring of the witch Sycorax and the devil himself. Prospero says it is fortunate that his enemies are now stranded on the island following the shipwreck. After telling his story, he puts Miranda under a sleeping spell and talks to his servant Ariel. Ariel explains that he caused the storm as Prospero instructed and has placed the passengers safely on different parts of the island. He's left the king's son Ferdinand all by himself. Ariel asks Prospero again for his freedom in return for all the worthy service he's done for him, and Prospero agrees to set him free after 2 more days and has Ariel remain invisible to everyone else. Prospero orders his poisonous slave Caliban, who inhabited the island long before Prospero arrives, to fetch more firewood. Now keep in mind, he treated Caliban very fairly up until the time he tried to ravage his daughter Miranda. Caliban curses his master, but must obey him because he's afraid of Prospero's magic. Meanwhile, Ariel uses magical music to lure Ferdinand to Prospero, and when Miranda first sees him, she's convinced he's a spirit, and the two fall instantly in love. Alonso, who is the king of Naples, Sebastian, his brother, Antonio, Prospero's brother, and Gonzalo, a kind nobleman who was compassionate and sympathetic when Prospero was being usurped, are stranded on another part of the island. Alonso is upset because he believes his son is dead. Ariel, who is invisible to the other characters, plays solemn music and sends everyone to sleep apart from Alonso, Sebastian, and Antonio. Alonso starts to feel drowsy, and the others promise to guard him while he takes a rest. Antonio suggests that this is an opportunity for Sebastian to become king. With Ferdinand believed to be dead and the king's daughter married in Tunis, Sebastian would be next in line to rule Naples. They draw their swords, planning to kill Alonso and Gonzalo while they sleep. But Ariel returns and awakens Gonzalo and the king just in time to prevent the attack. Meanwhile, Caliban is collecting wood and cursing Prospero as he does so. When Trinculo, the ship's jester, appears, Caliban hides under his cloak. Trinculo wonders whether the monster under the cloak is an islander. When the storm starts up again, he decides to take shelter under Caliban's cloak. Stefano, the ship's butler, arrives drunk and singing. He thinks the cloak hides a monster with 4 legs and pours wine into Caliban's mouth. Trinculo recognizes Stefano, and Caliban praises Stefano, calling him a god. Caliban promises to show them all the best parts of the island and to serve them faithfully. Meanwhile, Ferdinand is collecting logs and working hard to prove to Prospero that he is a worthy match for his daughter. Miranda proposes marriage to Ferdinand, and he accepts. By the way, this would be highly unusual back then. Trinculo, Caliban, and Stefano all get drunk. Caliban pledges his allegiance to Stefano and persuades him to kill Prospero and become lord of the island. They plot to approach Prospero during his afternoon nap and brain him after taking his books. Caliban says that Stefano could take Prospero's beautiful daughter as his queen of the island. Ariel overhears the plan and declares that he will tell his master. While Alonso and his party continue to search for Ferdinand, Prospero prepares an imaginary banquet for them. Prospero consents that Ferdinand may wed his daughter Miranda, but insists that they must be officially married. Prospero asks Ariel to bring all the spirits together and prepare a celebration for the couple. A series of nymphs appear to Miranda and Ferdinand. Ariel makes beautiful clothes appear to distract Stefano and Trinculo. As they marvel at the clothes, Caliban is frustrated that they've missed their opportunity to kill Prospero. Ariel tells Prospero that King Alonso and his followers are all deeply disturbed by the earlier magical vision. Moved with compassion, Prospero sends Ariel to get them. Alonso, Sebastian, and Antonio are all shocked to find Prospero alive and well and living on the island. Prospero confronts each of the men, first rebuking them for their past sins and then forgiving them. Alonso is repentant and reinstates Prospero as the Duke of Milan, but Antonio, Prospero's brother, remains silent. Alonso is delighted when Prospero reveals that his son Ferdinand is alive and engaged to Miranda. Meanwhile, Ariel disappears and magically repairs the ship and brings the crew. Ariel brings back Caliban, Stefano, and Trinculo wearing their stolen clothes. Prospero forgives Caliban and, keeping his promise, sets him and Ariel free. In the epilogue, Prospero vows that he is finished with magic and asks the audience for his forgiveness and freedom. When we return, we'll look at some of the remarkable characters in The Tempest. All right, now let's look at some of the major characters in this play. Prospero is the rightful Duke of Milan, who has been exiled for the past 12 years when his brother Antonio usurped him and cast him and his daughter Miranda out to sea to fend for themselves or to die in peril upon the waves. While he was the Duke, and for the entire time that he's been on the island, Prospero has been studying his books, which have empowered him with magical abilities that he uses to seek revenge on his wrongdoers. Miranda is Prospero's daughter, who is now 15 years old. She's never seen another human being except her father since they've been on the island. It's Prospero's wish that she marry Ferdinand, the son of Alonso, the king of Naples, even though Alonso helped Prospero's brother to usurp him. Ariel is a spirit who Prospero employs for his own purposes after having freed him from a cloven pine in which he had been imprisoned for 12 years by the blue-eyed witch Sycorax, the mother of Caliban. Although he longs for freedom, Ariel serves Prospero faithfully and consistently throughout the entire play. Caliban, however, is the misshapen offspring of Sycorax and the devil. Prospero treats him with human care, and Miranda taught him to speak along with many other skills, but once Caliban tried to force himself on Miranda, he was treated as a slave and confined to menial tasks and limited to only a small part of the island. By the way, when Stefano and Trinculo stumble across Caliban, they take him for a fish and then a monster. Antonio is Prospero's brother who usurped him many years ago. He's brought to the island as a result of the Tempest, and along with Alonso, the king of Naples, was responsible for stranding Prospero on the island for the past 12 years. Gonzalo was an honest old counselor of Prospero's who had no choice but to go along with the plot to usurp him. Although he took compassion on Prospero and provided him with clothes, food, water, necessities, and most importantly, his books, through which he developed his magical powers. Had it not been for Gonzalo, Prospero and Miranda would have most likely perished at sea. And finally, Stefano is the king's butler who is drunk throughout nearly the entire play. He's paired with Trinculo, the king's jester. Caliban latches onto these two men and wants Stefano to kill Prospero and become Caliban's new master. Coming up, let's take a look at some of the plot devices and memorable scenes from this play. In The Tempest, Shakespeare uses one of the most common plot devices, which is a shipwreck, although we learn later that the ship wasn't actually wrecked at all. We've seen this plot device used in The Winter's Tale, The Merchant of Venice, Othello, Twelfth Night, and The Life and Death of King John. But the purpose of this shipwreck was to make sure that the characters can't escape their environment and circumstances, allowing Prospero the opportunity to seek revenge on his usurping brother and bring Ferdinand and Miranda together so that they can fall in love. Which brings us to another common plot device, which is a father directing his daughter's courtship. Sometimes this works out well, as in Pericles, Prince of Tyre, with Thaisa and Pericles, or with Petruchio and Catherine in The Taming of the Shrew. But more often than not, paternal interference seems to backfire, as in Romeo and Juliet, Troilus and Cressida, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Cymbeline. Shakespeare uses the game of chess to symbolize the character story as a chess game, with Prospero as the king and all the other players as his pawns. The game represents the king being destroyed and Prospero's power. In the final scene, Prospero reveals Ferdinand and Miranda playing chess, symbolizing that he has caught the king Alonso and reprimanded him for his treachery. The game also represents Ferdinand keeping his promise to remain a virgin until he officially marries Miranda. This is also a very memorable scene because it shows these two young people in love not jumping into bed with each other while they're unsupervised, but honoring Prospero's wishes instead. And speaking of memorable scenes, probably the most comical one is Stefano and Trinculo stumbling upon Caliban and mistaking him for a fish because of the way he smells and because of his appearance. The fact that they get him drunk and he can't wait to serve them only adds to the humor in this tragic comedy. The Tempest contains some interesting themes, some of which we have not previously explored, such as freedom and slavery. When I started doing the research for this episode, I was surprised to find that some critics paint Prospero as an exploiter for imprisoning and enslaving Ariel and Caliban. But I fear that they were not doing Shakespeare nor the character justice with their accusations. So let's look at some of the facts. First, Prospero and Miranda lost their freedom when his brother Antonio usurped them and set them adrift. Fortunately, they made their way to the island where they could survive, and Prospero continued to grow in his use of magic. Next, he rescued Ariel, who was imprisoned in a cloven pine by a witch. Prospero freed him and used him in the role of an indentured servant, not only promising to eventually set him free, but making good on that promise before the end of the play. Then he stumbled across the misshapen creature Caliban, who was left all alone after his mother died, and treated him with human care and education until the creature attempted to rape his young daughter Miranda, and didn't harbor any remorse for his actions. Still, Prospero sets Caliban free at the end of the play, despite the fact that the creature tried to have him murdered. It's also important to remember that neither Ariel nor Caliban were human beings. They were creatures on whom Prospero practiced care, compassion, and discipline as they deserved. I wonder how many of those critics who accuse Shakespeare of creating a character who exploits others with his power own a cat or a dog. We've already looked at the themes of revenge and mercy in The Merchant of Venice, but they're also heavily prevalent in The Tempest. Prospero has every right to be angry with his brother for usurping his dukedom and casting him and his daughter adrift at sea. But fortunately, he doesn't follow through on his vengeance thanks to the intervention of his faithful servant Ariel. Listen to this exchange. Prospero says, "Say, my spirit, how fares the king and his followers? Confined together in the same fashion as you gave in charge, just as you left them. All prisoners, sir, in the lime grove which weather fens your cell. They cannot budge till your release. The king, his brother, and yours abide all three distracted, and the remainder mourning over them, brimful of sorrow and dismay, but chiefly him that you term, sir, the good old Lord Gonzalo. His tears run down his beard like winter's drops from eaves of reeds. Your charm so strongly works 'em that if you now beheld them, your affections would become tender. Dost thou think so, spirit? Mine would, sir, were I human. And mine shall. Hath thou, which art but air, a touch, a feeling of their afflictions, and shall not myself, one of their kind, that relish all as sharply passion as they, be kindlier moved than thou art? Though with their high wrongs I am struck to the quick, yet with my nobler reason 'gainst my fury do I take part. The rarer action is in virtue than in vengeance. They being penitent, the sole drift of my purpose doth extend not a frown further. Go, release them, Ariel. My charms I'll break, their senses I'll restore, and they shall be themselves." It's interesting that Shakespeare uses a spirit, Ariel, to remind Prospero of the importance of compassion and forgiveness. Also in Act 5, Scene 1, after Prospero decides to show mercy on his wrongdoers, he vows to abandon his magic. Ye elves of hills, brooks, standing lakes, and groves, and you that on the sands with printless foot do chase the ebbing Neptune, and do fly him when he comes back, you demi-puppets, that by moonshine do the green sour ringlets make, whereof the yew not bites, and you whose pastime is to make midnight mushrooms that rejoice to hear the solemn curfew, By whose aid, weak masters though you be, I have bedimmed the noontime sun, called forth the mutinous winds, and twixt the green sea and the azured vault, set roaring war. To the dread rattling thunder have I given fire, and rifted Jove's stout oak with his own bolt. The strong base promontory have I made shake, and by the spurs plucked up the pine and cedar. Graves at my command have waked their sleepers, oped and let 'em forth by my so potent art. But this rough magic I here abjure, and when I have required some heavenly music, which even now I do, to work mine end upon their senses, that this airy charm is for, I'll break my staff, bury it certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, I'll drown my book. We see here that Prospero, who first got lost in his books, then used his books to seek vengeance on his enemies, eventually resists the urge to punish them, and vows to destroy the means of his magical powers so that neither he nor anyone else will use them in the future. When we get back, we'll look at some of Shakespeare's most powerful lines in The Tempest. Now let's take a look at some of Shakespeare's most powerful lines. Some of them in The Tempest are still very well known today to people who have never read a Shakespeare work. In Act 5, Scene 1, we hear Miranda say, upon seeing the rest of the ship's castaways, "Oh, wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here! How beauteous mankind is! Oh, brave new world that has such people in it!" The innocence of this 15-year-old girl, removed from society since her infancy, has her believe that people are as good as they appear. And her father Prospero replies, "'Tis new to thee," because he's older and wiser, and he knows that's not always the case. We also hear Trinculo say, "Misery acquaints a man with strange bedfellows," which is a common expression even today, only it's been modified to "politics make strange bedfellows." You're probably also familiar with the expression, "What's past is prologue," uttered by Antonio in Act 2, Scene 1, which means that what has happened in the past is likely to happen again, or history repeats itself. In this case, he's referring to the fact that he's usurped one king, his brother, Prospero, and is tempting Sebastian to do the same thing that he did to his brother Alonso, the king of Naples. It's a similar message to American philosopher George Santayana's famous quote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." There's also another famous line spoken by Prospero in which he says, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on." This has come to describe something magical, usually in a motion picture, a tabloid story, or an incredible come-from-behind victory in sports, and paraphrase, "This is the stuff dreams are made of." And let's finish this section by looking at Prospero's remarks in Act 5, Scene 1, as he talks to King Alonso and the others. "Sir, I invite your highness and your train to my poor cell, where you shall take your rest for this one night, which part of it I'll waste with such discourse as, I not doubt, shall make it go quick by, the story of my life, and the particular accidents gone by since I came to this isle. And in the morn I'll bring you to your ship, and so to Naples, where I have hoped to see the nuptial of these our dear beloved solemnized, and thence retire me to Milan, where every third thought shall be my grave." Here we see Prospero, who has suffered unjustly for the past 12 years, live to be reinstated to his former position. His battles have been fought and won. Now he's tired, and he takes solace in the happiness of his daughter and her future role as the Queen of Naples. Like King Lear, he's ready to retire and live out the remainder of his life in solitude. When we return, we'll look at some of the major turning points and correlations in Shakespeare's plays. The first major turning point in The Tempest is when the ship carrying Prospero's enemies comes close enough to the island that he can strand them on shore. This is an event that has been 12 years removed from his usurpation, so his bitterness has had a long time to develop. Certainly, had Ariel not influenced him, Prospero could have turned The Tempest into a tragedy with his vengeance. I would also characterize Ariel's persuasion of Prospero to show mercy to his enemies as the major turning point of the entire play. Now, let's look at some correlations to other Shakespeare plays. Gonzalo's speech about excelling in the Golden Age is very reminiscent of Duke Sr.'s speech about living in the Forest of Arden in As You Like It. Listen to what Gonzalo has to say in Act 2, Scene 1. "Seat you, sir, be merry. You have cause, so have we all, of joy, for our escape is much beyond our loss. Our hint of woe is common. Every day some sailor's wife, the masters of some merchant, and the merchant have just our theme of woe. But for the miracle, I mean our preservation, few in millions can speak like us. Then wisely, good sir, weigh our sorrow with our comfort." And then he begins to describe his perfect utopian society under his government. "In the Commonwealth, I would by contraries execute all things, for no kind of traffic would I admit, no name of magistrate, letters should not be known, riches, poverty, and the use of service, none. Contract, succession, born, bound of land, tilth, vineyard, none. No use of metal, corn, or wine, or oil, no occupation, all men idle. And all women too, but innocent and pure, no sovereignty. All things in common nature should produce, without sweat or endeavor, treason, felony, sword, pike, knife, gun, or need of any engine would I not have. But nature should bring forth of its own kind all foison, that's abundant harvest, all abundance to feed my innocent people. I would with such perfection govern, sir, to excel the Golden Age." When Antonio is asked by Sebastian if his conscience ever bothers him for usurping his brother, he replies, "Aye, sir, where lies that?" It's very similar to Falstaff's Catechism about honor, who dismisses it as inconvenient in Henry IV, Part 1. It also smacks of the casualness that Richard III utters about Lady Anne. "I'll have her, but I will not keep her long." This after having won Anne's hand in marriage, which was no small feat, considering he murdered her husband and father-in-law, King Henry VI. As we've seen in the life and death of King John, Henry V, Richard III, and Henry VIII, marriages between opposing factions can create strong alliances. In The Tempest, we see Prospero give his daughter's hand in marriage to Ferdinand, thus creating a strong union between Milan and Naples going forward. Here's Prospero's "Our revels all have ended" speech. This is Act 4, Scene 1. "Our revels now have ended. These, our actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit, shall dissolve, and like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." It's interesting that even though The Tempest was not originally performed at the Globe Theatre, Shakespeare chose to reference the great globe itself in this moving passage. And finally, Shakespeare closes his play with one of the major characters delivering an epilogue. In this case, it's Prospero, but he's done it in the other plays like Rosalind in As You Like It and Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. But unlike in the other plays, Prospero is not looking for thanks for entertaining the audience. He's asking for forgiveness for having them watch him endure his struggles. Now my charms are all o'erthrown, and what strength I have's mine own, which is most faint. Now 'tis true, I must be here confined by you, or sent to Naples. Let me not, since I have my dukedom got, and pardon the deceiver, dwell in this bare island by your spell, but release me from my bands, with the help of your good hands. Gentle breath of yours my sails must fill, or else my project fails, which was to please. Now I want spirits to enforce, art to enchant, and my ending is despair unless I be relieved by prayer, which pierces so that it assaults mercy itself and frees all faults. As you from crimes would pardoned be, let your indulgence set me free. I also find it interesting that in The Tempest, As You Like It, and A Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare creates a setting where many of the characters reveal or discover who they really are in the freedom of the wilderness and the great outdoors. When we get back, we'll look at some interesting facts about The Tempest. In doing some research for this episode, I came across some interesting facts about The Tempest. According to University of Virginia professor Paul Cantor, mariners who have read the boatswain's instructions at the beginning of the play said that they have confirmed that they were the exact right instructions for those circumstances, meaning Shakespeare practiced remarkable attention to detail to ensure that anyone knowledgeable about navigation would appreciate Shakespeare's efforts and credibility. Caliban says that Prospero and Miranda taught him many things, including how to name the bigger light and how the less. This most likely is a reference from Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 to 5, which reads, "And God said, Be light made, and light was made. And God saw the light that it was good. And he divided the light from the darkness, and he called the bright light day, and the darkness night." This would indicate that the Bible was one of the books Prospero had on the island. Many scholars feel that Shakespeare made Prospero an autobiographical character because The Tempest was his last play, and he was saying goodbye to his audience. However, The Tempest was not his last play. According to E.K. Chambers, Henry VIII and the Two Noble Kinsmen were both written after The Tempest. And as an author of 27 books myself, I can tell you that you always put yourself into your characters. So in that case, Shakespeare is also Caliban, Ariel, and Miranda, not to mention Hamlet, King Lear, Macbeth, Shylock, Richard III, and Othello, because he created all of them. So where exactly is Prospero's magical island located? Some speculate that it had to be somewhere between Italy and Tunis in Tunisia, where the King of Naples and his party had just witnessed the wedding of his daughter. That would put the island somewhere in the Mediterranean. However, others speculate that it was Bermuda, while some say that it could have been anywhere from one of the Jan Mayen Islands off the coast of Greenland, or perhaps the dreamy French Polynesian island of Huahine in the South Pacific. Well, the reality is we just don't know because Shakespeare didn't say, although it may have been inspired by real-world accounts of exploration and colonization taking place either in Shakespeare's day or before. Of the known 27 moons of the planet Uranus, 24 of them are named after characters in Shakespeare's plays, and The Tempest provided the inspiration for the names of several of the moons, more than any other play. In fact, Miranda, Caliban, Sycorax, Prospero, Sebetos, Stefano, Trinculo, Francisco, and Ferdinand all come from this play. However, there's also a moon called Ariel, but that one was named for a character in Alexander Pope's poem, The Rape of the Lock. And finally, Aldous Huxley ironically took the title for his 1932 dystopian novel, Brave New World, from The Tempest. Now let's take a look at some of the great actors in the 1983 BBC Shakespeare version of The Tempest. The magnificent actor Michael Hordern, who plays Prospero, also played Capulet in Romeo and Juliet in 1978, Jupiter in Cymbeline, and the title role of King Lear, both in 1980, and LaFoe in All's Well That Ends Well in 1981. And before that, he played Senex in the 1966 film A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum with Zero Mostel and Michael Crawford. John Nettleton, who plays Gonzalo, also played Lord Chamberlain in Henry VIII in 1979. Pippa Gard, who plays Marina, also played Hermia in A Midsummer Night's Dream and Diana in All's Well That Ends Well, both in 1981. Notably, in all three of these plays, the same actress was charged with guarding her virginity, modesty, and honor against the advances of unwanted aggressors. And ironically, Christopher Gard plays Ferdinand opposite his real-life cousin Pippa Gard, who plays his love interest Marina. Yet somehow, the two never kiss throughout the entire courtship. What will they think of next? Stay tuned for today's trivia challenge, which is called Daggers of the Mind. All right, now today's trivia challenge is called Daggers of the Mind. Shakespeare used daggers as very ominous portents of things to come. Name the play in which the following lines appear and who said them. Number 1, "O happy dagger, this is thy sheath, there rust, and let me die." Number 2, "Is that a dagger I see before me?" And number 3, "Hath no man's dagger a point for me?" When we get back, I'll have the answers for you as well as some relevant lessons from The Tempest. Okay, now let's see how you did. Today's trivia challenge was Daggers of the Mind. Name the play in which the following lines appear and who said them. Number 1, "O happy dagger, this is thy sheath, there rust and let me die." That was Juliet in Romeo and Juliet. Number 2, "Is that a dagger I see before me?" That was Macbeth from Macbeth. And number 3, "Hath no man's dagger here a point for me?" That was Leonato from Much Ado About Nothing. Now, let's take a look at some of the relevant lessons from The Tempest. First, seek personal and professional balance. Although Antonio was wrong for usurping his brother, Prospero has to bear some of the responsibility because he relinquished the leadership that he had to his brother and spent all of his time with his nose in his books. If you're a leader, make sure that you're putting those you serve ahead of your own self-interests. Second, to whom much is given, much is expected. Prospero wielded his power to create the tempest and strand the ship's occupants so that he could seek retribution. Fortunately, we see that he was moved by Ariel's entreaty for compassion, and he had a change of heart about punishing his brother. By vowing to destroy his book and his staff, and making good on his promise to free Ariel and Caliban, we see Prospero grow into a truly noble character. And third, in all things, be gracious. Let's face it, 12 years was an awfully long time to hold on to a grudge. Granted, what Antonio and Alonso did to Prospero was wrong, but in the end, you can see that it took a toll on Prospero because it consumed him for a dozen years. Life gets infinitely easier when we learn to forgive faster. So don't let the sun go down upon your anger. I'm Dave Romeo, and thank you for watching this episode of Romeo and Shakespeare. Please join me next time when a seemingly prodigal son puts away childish things in order to become one of England's greatest kings.